Well, on the programme today we have Nandita Mongia of the UN Development Programme. In London, urban planner Professor Ricky Burdett at the London School of Economics and architect Alejandro Gutierrez, who's with Arup. Thank you for staying with us on the programme. Ricky, let me come to you and talk a little bit about the Dongtan situation, if you would. How does building a city from the ground up make a difference? And does deciding where you put the city in the first place play into the whole scheme of things?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, you have to consider very carefully where you need a new city. And I'm sure that Dongtan is a very well designed concept, but I think in terms of our responsibility for the planet, we have to first use our cities as well as possible. Let me just take you back, for example, where we are here in London. We have an enormous amount of redundant industrial land, which instead of building new towns all over the place, we should use first, and that's public policy at the moment. I think Asian cities like Shanghai need to take a really hard look to see whether they're using all the redundant land along the riverfront, all those factories that maybe in 5 or 10 years are not going to be there. I think Dongtan may work very well, but let's not forget, and I think Alejandro will agree with this, you still have to get there, you still have to drive there. We tried this experiment in the UK in the 1950s with the new towns, and I have to say 50 years on, the results are not great. How many people want to live in a new town when it's remote from business activity and everything else?
So let me
have to be
ask
careful not
Alejandro
to create a
to answer
generation
that.
of suburbs rather than cities.
Alejandro, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the context in Europe is quite different, and I agree with Ricky in principle that in Europe and in general you should try to regenerate and intensify cities that within their own boundaries. But in the case of China, as I was saying before, the growth, the demographic shift and the economic growth generate the need for 50 Shanghais for the whole eastern border of China, which means that you cannot only think about regeneration of brownfield sites, and you have to think of development of new areas. In that context, Dongtan is a node within an urban region which is the Yangtze Delta River. And what Dongtan is doing is creating the first node of zero impact, meaning zero carbon emissions for the whole city, and zero tailpipe emissions, and fully powered by renewables in that region where Chongming Island is the poorest let's say, district of the region, and generating opportunities for people that live there to have better employment, better quality of life, and a better future, basically.
Let me ask Nandita, I mean, from the UN perspective and the whole long-term development angle, how do you see this?
I think as far as Dongtan is concerned, if it's located where it's located, chances of this going wrong are minimal.
Ricky, I saw you raise an eyebrow at the suggestion that there are not too many problems.
I just want to raise an issue that I don't think we can talk blandly about concepts of cities. Cities are not just places where people live. It's also places where people go to do business, where they go to be educated, where they have to have hospitals. So the key thing in talking about any of these new urban developments, is to think about all the institutions that make life exciting and generate income and everything else.
All right.
And I think Alejandro is right to think of Dongtan as part of a big metropolitan region, but one cannot be naive about who's going to pay for the hospitals and the institutions that need to actually sustain life.
Okay, we're getting to the end of the show, so let me finish it off by asking all three of you whether the existing cities that we've got, as we know they're becoming larger, ever larger, and some of them will become mega cities, whether they will be able to cope with the weight of population that's coming into them. Nandita, let me put that to you first. Do you think somewhere like Jakarta will be able to solve the problems it has and grow even larger without becoming worse?
I think in Jakarta there are many areas where things can be improved without too much of expenses, but just a bit of political will, partnership, bringing in the private sector. I've personally tried to initiate landfill waste management in Jakarta, and it has taken a long time, and much longer than it has taken in several other countries. So it's not that it cannot be done or it cannot be minimized. It requires a regulatory environment, a policy setup, a partnership, and initiatives which are down, community-based as well as led by the private sector and the government. It's not something that anybody is suffering on his or her own volition. It's a community thing, and it's better organized and addressed at a comprehensive level. But Jakarta doesn't have to suffer every bit of it, what it's suffering.
Alejandro, you're building a city from scratch, but obviously most of the people are living in cities that have a long history. What is the future as far as urbanization is concerned from your perspective?
I think existing cities have the opportunity and must change to reflect, for example, the competitiveness of the global economy. If Jakarta is going, for example, if Jakarta is going to compete in the global economy as they have been for the last 20 years, they need to dramatically change their patterns of traffic and their management of the city. And I think integrated planning, where you plan about land uses and transport and resource management, is a very fundamental element of the whole equation. And then political will and governance, I think, are key elements to make cities work better in the future. Okay,
and Ricky, a final word with you. You mentioned Tokyo earlier on, and that's a great example of a mega city that's got it right. But do you think that is a benchmark, a pattern for the future? Do you think every city will be able to achieve that?
I think it's absolutely possible. I think that big is not necessarily bad in terms of cities. I think the biggest challenge is, let's remember that 1 out of 3 inhabitants of cities in the next 20, 30 years will be living in slums. Therefore, we risk having concentrations of urban poverty rather than rural poverty. And I think what cities need to do is to accept people from different backgrounds and make sure that they don't get stuck in neighborhoods which are ghettos or slums of that sort. That requires, as Alejandro said, good planning, a sense of vision, and designing the shape of the future city in a way that it can, like Tokyo, be well connected and well supported. There are plenty of examples of big cities which are very, very livable.
And that is where we'll have to leave it. Thank you all very much indeed for joining us today. And that's all we've got time for. From me and everyone else here at 101 East, goodbye.